Hey, everybody, what's going on? Jeff Raker, another episode of the Daily Ticket. This one for Tuesday, the 12th of March, 2024. And full disclosure, I had a podcast already made. I'm here at the parking structure at Little Caesars Arena. Pistons are playing currently. I made a podcast before going into the Pistons game. Had a broadcast from the concourse. Lions had yet to make any moves. So I made this whole podcast about 20 minutes long about if you're worried because the Lions aren't making moves while other teams are making moves. What happens? I go in, I start to do the show. It was all of a 35-minute show. The Lions make two moves. They sign defensive end Marcus Davenport, and then they trade for a corner. Here's what I want to do. I want to start with the corner. Then we'll get to Marcus Davenport. I don't know if we'll have time for comments today, but I am happy to report that I did go into Little Caesars Arena, and Troy Weaver did not kick my ass. Didn't. I looked for Troy. I was going to tell him he was a bad GM. I couldn't find him. I can't get enough of that story, by the way. Yesterday's podcast about how Troy Weaver went at a fan. You're lucky I don't kick your ass. Fan called him a bad GM. I do wonder, is that okay? If you see a general manager and he's bad at his job sitting amongst the fans, are you allowed to say to him, you stink at your job? As long as you don't cross the line, I kind of feel like that's a totally fair heckle. You should see the shit that gets said to me, for crying out loud. I think it's totally fair to call a bad GM and either not sit with the fans or, anyway, let's get on with it, shall we? I got off track. So the Lions make a couple moves in free agency, and this is being recorded at 7:10 on Monday. So any move they make after right now, I'm not responsible for. So anything I say right now, you got to take into consideration that by the time you watch this or listen to this, maybe they've made more moves. Hopefully they've made more moves. I love this day. It's very exciting. So I was on the air, and they get Marcus Davenport, the defensive end. We'll get to him momentarily. And Carlton Davis is your new cornerback. That's right. For all the people like myself that wanted Legarius Sneed from the Kansas City Chiefs, he was franchise tagged. He's going to be traded. You would have had to pay him. You're not getting him. I always thought it was a long shot that Brad Holmes was going to get him anyway. We know that the Lions reached out on Sneed. Apparently, not their cup of tea. Instead, Carlton Davis. Good corner. I keep hearing the word underrated. We'll get into it, but first let me tell you what they gave up. Lions gave up a third-round pick. They had 3 of them in the draft, so it's no big loss. In return, they got the cornerback Carlton Davis, and they got 2 6th-round picks. One for this year and one for next year. And we do know that Brad Holmes can spin 6th-round picks into gold and diamonds. So I think it was a good trade. I do. Carlton Davis has 1 year left on his contract, $14 million. He's only 27 years old, so he's the exact same age as Legarius Sneed. Without a doubt, whether you like him or hate him, he's a massive upgrade. And he's more than just depth. He's your number 1 cornerback. Like, this is it. He's CB1, Cam Sutton CB2, Emmanuel Mosley's in the mix as well, and Kindell Valdor, I'm sure, is going to be in the mix as well. He was a 2nd-round pick back in 2018. He signed a massive $45 million contract with the Bucs. This is his last year, $14 million. I got to believe the Lions are going to try to re-sign him, but we got to see what kind of season he has. Now, you're going to see on social media a couple plays involving Davis that are not all that great. One of them is the Craig Reynolds big play in Tampa Bay in the regular season. Remember, the Lions won that game like 20-6, I believe the final was. There was a big block as well. That's right. Carlton Davis got blocked. So I'm sure you're going to see that on social media. However, he's a pretty good cornerback. He's not great by any means. You wonder why the Bucs let him go. Because $14 million left on his contract, why wouldn't they want to re-sign him? He's only 27 years old. Good corners are hard to find. However, I don't know their salary cap situation. Maybe they needed to make cuts, needed to make changes, free up some money, and maybe he's just a cap casualty. But I do believe the Lions got a good one. I'm not going to say great. I still like L'Jarius Sneed a heck of a lot better. So you gave up a third-round pick for Davis. What would it have cost for Sneed? We're led to believe a second-round pick. Maybe you give up 29 overall, your first-round pick, and then you would have to sign him to a contract, which eventually you're going to have to sign Davis to a contract too. He's not going to cost you as much as Sneed. So I think you take all these things into consideration and you say to yourself, okay, I fell in love with L'Jarius Sneed. You got to get over it. You improved your cornerback situation. We know it was a position of need. See what happens. Here's his stats, all right? What do you want first? I'll tell you how good he is. I'll tell you the positives first. Carlton Davis is awesome in man coverage. He's an absolute stud when it comes to man coverage. Check this out. In man coverage last season, 60% completion percentage allowed, no touchdowns allowed in man, 75.1 passer rating when targeted, and a 68.8 PFF grade. That's pretty dominant. Again, I keep hearing the word underrated. Doesn't have great ball production, but he definitely can erase number one receivers. Last season overall, 247 coverage snaps, 46 targets, 26 receptions for 330 yards. So not all that much. He had 2 picks. He had 8 forced incompletions, and quarterbacks that targeted him had a 66.2 passer rating. Now, that's really good. I also wanted to bring this up. I saw this from Kyle Meinke, covers the Lions from MLive. I love this stat. Meinke is with it. He decided to look at the 2 games that the Bucs played the Lions, one in the regular season in Tampa Bay and one, of course, at Ford Field in the playoffs to get to the NFC title game. Carlton Davis played in both those games. He was targeted 9 times by Jared Goff. He allowed 29 yards. It's pretty good, right? 9 times, allowed 29 yards against the prolific offense that is the Detroit Lions. Again, I think people fell in love with L'Jarius Sneed. I think people now are going to say Sneed wasn't that good because you didn't get him. They're probably going to say he was a byproduct of the great defensive line that he played behind. And maybe they're right. I got a buddy currently texting me right now saying Sneed was lucky. Sneed just a product of his environment. I don't believe that. I think he's a really good cornerback, the best cornerback on the market, and I think he's going to get paid when a team trades for him. It's just not going to be the Detroit Lions. I also wanted to bring this up. When Tom Brady left the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Carlton Davis did not appreciate the critics and the doubters saying that the Bucs weren't going to be any good because the best quarterback of all time just left them. I like this quote that he gave, and this is the season after Brady retired. Anybody who feels we've lost Tom and lost something is going to be in for a rude awakening. A rude awakening. Tom was great. He was a great addition for us. But obviously, it's a team sport. Obviously, you need components to be successful. We still have those components, and I'm only getting better. And then he drops this line. We're going to wreck shit. Like wreck shit. Interceptions, turnovers, plays will be made. I will say plays will be made. Exclamation. I like that quote. I like the pickup of Carlton Davis. I'll be honest, when I was on the radio when it first happened, I didn't know a whole lot about him. I had to do a little research before this podcast. All seems good. 1 year, $14 million. You gave up a 3rd-round pick. He's definitely cheaper than L'Jarius Sneed would have been. I am curious. Where are you at on your new cornerback? You've gotten better in that position. There's no question about it. But are you as good as you wanted to be? Furthermore, is he good enough to play in Detroit? I want to add this, too. I think this is good. He was responsible for 65 pass breakups over the last 5 seasons. He led the league in pass breakups in 2019 and 2020. So Carlton Davis can play, guys. He can. Also, I had a caller call me up yesterday on the radio show and said, is it time now for the Tom Jones? It's not unusual because his name's Carlton. Get it? I didn't get it right away either. I was a big fan of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I was. I didn't get it right away either, but I got to believe there's going to be a lot of references, Carlton Davis to Carlton Banks, and I wouldn't be surprised at Ford Field if they play a little Tom Jones. I don't know if Carlton Davis is into that. So let me know what you think. Do you like your new cornerback? I'll tell you this. Brad Holmes in free agency took care of the one biggest position of need. I don't know if people are going to be happy or sad about this, but at least he obviously addressed it. Here's the other thing. This does not stop the Lions from drafting a corner, but I told you this before. I would rather have a veteran, experienced cornerback because it's a very difficult position than a rookie just drafted. There's exceptions, obviously. But when you draft a corner, it takes years to develop that corner. You now have, in a year that you need to win, the window is wide open, could go all the way to the Super Bowl and win it. You got yourself a veteran, a pretty good corner back in that secondary. And now you're much deeper. But it's not out of the realm of possibilities that Brad Holmes drafts a corner in the draft as well. So what do you think of your new corner? Hit me up in the comments. Some people are going to be happy. Some people are going to be pissed. I think the biggest issue, if you were in love with L'Jarius Sneed, the fact that you gave up a third-round pick to get him, it would have been a second-round pick probably. So that was doable. I think people are going to be annoyed by that. The other guy you got was defensive end Marcus Davenport. Injured all last season. Played in 4 games with the Minnesota Vikings. Had a hurt ankle, had 2 sacks, ended up on injured reserve. This is a depth guy. You're not counting on this guy to go and have 12 sacks. 3 years ago, he did have like 9 sacks with the Saints. 2 years ago, he started 9 games, only had a half a sack. He's an ex-New Orleans Saint. Of course, he's got that familiarity with Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell, and I got to believe that's why they went out and got him. He probably fits the culture. He's like a good replacement for Charles Harris. That didn't work out. For Romeo Okwara. I mean, there's a great chance his best years are behind him. To be fair, he was injured pretty much all season last year. But Marcus Davenport was pretty productive from 2018 to 2022. 39 quarterback pressures a year, including 9 quarterback hits a year. That was with New Orleans. He had an 88.8 PFF grade, which is great in 2021. Ranked 8th among edge defenders. 84.1 in 2019. That was 17th. He's 6'5", only 28 years old, and he doesn't turn 28 until September. Probably going to make about $5 to $6 million. I don't know the numbers just yet. And he ran a 4.58 40. So if last year he was just simply injured, then yes, he's got more to give. But if he's on the downside of his career, but again, he's only going to be 28, then we'll see. I don't expect much, but that's okay. Brad Holmes hasn't really killed it in free agency. He has in the draft. So we'll see if Marcus Davenport can really do a nice job for the Lions defensive front. So there you go. 2 moves. I haven't looked at my phone. There could be more. If there are, we'll talk tomorrow on the Daily Ticket. Listen, I've talked way too long today. I'll get to the comments tomorrow when I'm not in my car. We'll go over your comments. We'll see what else the Lions did. Curious how you feel about these 2 moves, especially Carlton Davis. No L'Jarius Sneed, Carlton Davis for a 3rd-round pick. You happy? You sad? Where you at? Let me know on the comments. We'll read them all tomorrow on a hump day. Guys, it's been fun. I got to get out of this parking structure. Got to go home. Got to put my daughter to sleep. And we'll catch you tomorrow on the Daily Ticket. See you.